Mom is the sober female supporting character in the book. In order to survive, she quickly took me and divorced my sickly dad who had Bai Guang in his heart. And in order to prevent me from living a hard life, she quickly found me a new dad. My new dad is handsome and rich. The only drawback is that he has many ex-girlfriends. That day, my new dad's ex-girlfriend came to mock my mom. Do you think he loves you because he proposed to you? In fact, he has not broken up with me. Mom took a sip of coffee and said disapprovingly, in ancient times, people like me were called mistresses, and you were just concubines. After Mom said this, the beautiful aunt opposite was stunned for a moment, and then began to persuade Mom again. He doesn't love you at all, he just hasn't tried your type, and he's just looking for something new. Mom drank coffee with a calm face. The beautiful aunt was a little anxious. She took out the photos from moments and slid them to Mom one by one, sometimes going out to sea, sometimes racing, and sometimes watching the aurora. Every one of them has the figure of my new dad. Pretty Aunt's mouth was almost dry, but my mother still had the same expression as before. She just turned her head and reminded me occasionally, Yo-Yo, you can't eat ice cream anymore. Pretty Aunt was a little angry. Jane, are you listening to me? My mother replied gently, yes, you said that you always accompanied Joe on business trips, including when he talked to me remotely, you sat on his lap. Pretty Aunt was proud. How do you feel? Mom smiled, and she always looks good when she smiles. How can I feel it? I'm not at the scene, aren't you the ones who feel it? How about secretly feeling it? In fact, my mother was not angry, she was asking the question very seriously. But Pretty Aunt was angry. She stood up, like a rooster about to crow in a cartoon, blushing, holding her neck high and saying loudly, you are a second-hand person with a burden, do you really think Joe cares about you? Be smart and leave by yourself, don't wait for him to dump you. Do you see this haute couture dress of mine? He gave it to me, and I'm going to accompany him to the dinner. Then she was about to leave with her bag. I put down the ice cream and chased after her. I grabbed a corner of her skirt and looked up to tell her, Auntie, I'm not a burden, I'm my mother's baby. The beautiful auntie shook me off in disgust, don't wrinkle my skirt. Then she walked away without looking back. I spread my hands and looked at the ugly chocolate ice cream mark on the back of her beautiful skirt. Mom saw it too. But she didn't say anything. Because she didn't like others calling me a burden. Mom said that I was her baby who gave birth to her with half her life and a bucket of blood. So, Mom has always respected my opinion. She asked me, how about Uncle Joe being your new dad? Or, do you want to follow your real dad? I tilted my head and thought for a while. My mom and dad divorced, more or less because of me. I heard that my mom was in agony before giving birth to me. My dad coldly pulled out the painkiller from my mom and said, just bear with it, Faye is in more pain than you. Faye was my dad's white moonlight who died unexpectedly. Back then, my dad blamed everything on my innocent mom. After my mom gritted her teeth and gave birth to me, she had a near-death experience and suddenly woke up. She quickly asked my dad for a divorce. My mom hugged me and said, if you don't divorce, he will torture you to death sooner or later. The life of a female supporting role is also a life. I don't know if my dad didn't want to divorce or was really cruel. He gave my mom a choice, divorce is fine, but you can only choose one between money and children. My mom said she wanted to choose money, but I cried for no reason, like a weak kitten, she felt guilty and had to choose me. My mom lied, no matter what, she would choose me. Later, because we had no money, we both lived a very hard life. Mainly because my father was a bad guy. He had contacted many companies, but they didn't dare to hire my mother. Until she met Uncle Joe, he was interested in my mother, and my mother immediately understood. Uncle Joe was handsome and rich, and he bought a big house for my mother. My mother and I no longer had to squeeze in a small house with cockroaches. He also sent me to a very beautiful and large kindergarten. The teachers there were very gentle. No one was mean to me. Even if I didn't listen, no one would secretly prick my arms and buttocks with a needle. My mother didn't have to work so hard. She could fall asleep while standing while cooking noodles for me. She had a big bump on her head, which was so ugly. So, is there anything wrong with him having many ex-girlfriends? My mother said that children can ask if they don't understand, so I asked. Mom, they always say that Uncle Joe's heart is not with you, so where is his heart? Can a person's heart move around? Why can't mine? Mom smiled faintly, who cares where his heart is? I don't want his heart. Talking about love costs money. She also said that most rich men are fickle, just as easily as spending money. I didn't quite understand, but Mom said, he is the most suitable candidate for your new father that Mom could find. He said he would book the entire amusement park for you to play with on the weekend. I understood the last sentence and instantly became happy. Uncle Joe is my new father, and I am as satisfied as Mom. Mom, you must get married. Mom smiled and said yes. Then the new father came. So happy? He touched my head and handed me a cute rabbit doll, but his eyes were cast on Mom. Every time he came, Mom was very busy. She served him just like serving the master on TV. Bring him slippers, serve tea, wash fruits, etc. Sometimes the new father would act like a spoiled child and not wash his hands, so mom would use my wet wipes to help him clean every finger. The new father said that mom was the most gentle woman he had ever met. In fact, he didn't know. Sometimes my mother is not so gentle. Although my mother can't even open the cap of a mineral water bottle in front of my new father, but she secretly learned Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Taekwondo, and the coaches all praised my mother for her good physical fitness. Your mother is so brave, she can almost kill an elephant. The new father said that he likes to come to our house, it's very relaxing and feels like home. Maybe this is why he wants to marry my mother. My mother didn't believe it at first. The new father advised her, for a rich first generation like me who started from scratch, marriage is up to me. So was my biological father forced to marry my mother because he was a rich second generation? Sometimes, I was quite afraid that my new father would die in our house. Because it was said on TV, men are most afraid of dying in a gentle place. I was so scared that I secretly took out Ultraman, put 3 French fries on it, and said goodbye. The new father must not die, he must marry my mother. Because I don't know if my mother has saved enough money. I was very afraid that my mother would be too tired from work again, fall asleep while cooking noodles, and hit her head. Maybe Ultraman doesn't understand Mandarin. Although the new father didn't die. But it seems that I can't marry my mother again. Oh, if I had known about those 3 fries, I would have eaten them by myself. That day, my new father complained of a headache. When my mother was massaging his temples, he grabbed my mother's hand. Jane, accompany me to the class reunion tomorrow, okay? My mother was a little surprised because she had never attended any of my new father's gatherings. In the past, my new father had never asked my mother to go. My mother said that my new father was probably afraid of bumping into his girlfriend. I know about bumping into his girlfriend, but I don't understand bumping into his girlfriend. My mother smiled and said that my new father had many girlfriends and would move around in different circles. My new father was like a fish, jumping in different fish ponds every day. If 2 fish appear in the same fish pond, he will be too busy to take care of them. I seem to understand a little bit. My new father is the owner of the fish pond. My new father advised my mother, we are getting married soon, so we should meet our friends, right? My mother hung her neck at first and didn't speak, like a quiet orchid. Didn't you say you wanted to learn project management at my company? You'll need these people in the future. When talking about work, my mother's eyes lit up. In fact, my mother is more interested in work than going fishing with my new father. My mother said, let him give me fish, isn't it him who teaches me how to fish? I didn't understand the fish coming and going. But my mother agreed to go to the party. I was also at the reunion of my new father's old classmates. Because my new father said he could take care of the children. Everyone praised me for being cute. Joe is really good at giving birth. This baby looks like a New Year's picture doll. The baby is 4 years old, why are you still hiding it? No wedding? My new father listened quietly, and then curved his lips, it will be soon. He didn't tell everyone that he was not my biological father. My new father didn't say anything, so my mother naturally wouldn't say anything. Everyone said that my new father hid his mother very well. Sister-in-law is gentle and virtuous, no wonder Joe is so calm. Someone else said, the family is harmonious and has a good influence. Joe is getting married. I'm afraid he is not running for the president of the Haisher Chamber of Commerce, right? The new father didn't say anything, but just raised his glass and smiled at them. Everyone started a new topic. Only the cold man in a black trench coat opposite my mother didn't say anything. Everyone seemed to dare not tease him and respected him very much. In fact, I know him. The current helmsman of Kaifeng Group, the former illegitimate child. My mother showed me him on the financial page. That's my biological father, but no one knows that my mother was my father's wife. Including the new father. Because they didn't have a wedding. Just got a marriage certificate, and after giving birth to me, got a divorce certificate. Dad just glanced at me and turned his eyes away. From a close distance, both the new father and my father are very handsome. The new father is more gentle and affectionate, and the father is more noble and cold. The aunties at the table had been secretly looking at the two of them, with the same eyes as the new dad's ex-girlfriends. Only the mother didn't look at anyone. It turned out that the new dad's words were quite interesting. Why are you looking at me? There's food on my face? The aunties suddenly didn't dare to look, and lowered their heads in fear to eat the food. Mom calmly picked up the food and ate, and fed me and the new dad. However, when she picked up a piece of snow-white fish for herself, a cold and low voice suddenly sounded. You will have allergies if you eat this fish. It was from the father opposite, but his expression didn't seem to be concerned about people, but rather like he was joking. Although the voice was not loud, the mother seemed a little scared. The fingertips trembled slightly, and suddenly overturned the red wine glass in front of her. The red wine dripped into flowers on the mother's white dress. The mother looked at the new father, who turned his head to talk to someone about land and financing, and seemed not to hear. Mom's expression relaxed slightly, and she whispered to the new dad, "I'm going to the bathroom." 06 Mom was gone for a while. The new dad continued to chat with others while putting a bunch of dishes into my bowl. It was as high as a hill, and my belly was round and I couldn't eat anymore. I had to find an excuse to go find Mom. At the end of the long corridor, Mom came back. But I saw Dad suddenly appear and dragged Mom into an empty box with one hand. I didn't shout, but followed quietly. There was a small gap in the door, and they stood by the window and didn't notice me. Dad had a cigarette in his mouth. He said casually, "I thought you were so strong-willed that you insisted on not looking for me for almost 4 years. It turns out that you have found a new partner." Mom lowered her eyes and smiled faintly. "People have to live, don't they?" Dad pinched Mom's chin again. "If I tell Joe that you are my ex-wife, do you think he will still want you? We were sworn enemies when we were in school. He would not want anything I don't want, let alone a person." Mom's body stiffened slightly. But the clenched palm slowly opened again. "Emotionally, you should not have the time to care about your ex-wife, right? When a rabbit is anxious, it will bite." Dad's mouth curved slightly, but there was no smile in his eyes. "I am interested. Let's see how you bite?" Dad pinched Mom's chin again and moved closer. A puff of smoke sprayed on Mom's face, and Mom coughed. My little fist was hardened by seeing this, and I just wanted to go in and beat him. Just then, footsteps came from behind. "Yo-yo, where's your mom?" It was the new dad. His shiny leather shoes stepped on the polished corridor step by step, and the click sound was particularly crisp. In less than 5 steps, he was in front of me. Then, he should see the father and mother in the empty box. 07 Just as the new father took 2 steps, his cell phone rang. It was the voice of an aunt on the phone. He frowned slightly. "What are you doing here?" The new father answered the phone and turned to walk out. My heart finally fell back into my stomach. Turning my head to look inside the door, my mother did not struggle anymore. "If you are not afraid of bad luck, just kiss me." My mother just slowly lifted her sleeves, and her snow-white arms were covered with dense red dots. Dad was stunned and let go of my mother. "What's going on?" My mother's voice was very low, and I had to prick up my ears to hear it. "What, white snow disease, not going to live long?" I almost jumped up. It's summer now, how could my mother get white snow disease? Not going to live long? After listening to my mother's words, my father let go of her, took out a cigarette and smoked it by the window. My mother took the opportunity to get out. Pulled me out of the corridor. When no one was around, Mom opened the bag and swallowed an anti-allergy pill. "Mom, what's wrong with you?" "Don't worry, Yo-Yo. Mom just had an allergic reaction to yam. That's why the red spots appeared." I remembered that ever since Dad stared at Mom at the table, Mom ate a lot of fried yam with Lily. "Mom never touches this dish because she will be allergic. Yo-Yo, let's go home first." "I understand. Mom doesn't like to see Dad." "What about Uncle Joe?" Mom lifted the curtain and took a look and then fell silent. My eyes were bright, and I saw it too. There was a car parked downstairs, and the new dad seemed to be hugging an aunt. Oh, it was the beautiful aunt who had coffee with Mom last time. Mom looked at it quietly for a while, and then drove away directly in the Cullinan of the new dad. On the way, the new dad called. "Jane, where are you?" Mom said softly, "I saw you busy downstairs, so we went home first." "What about my car?" "You can't drive, right?" Mom turned the steering wheel with one hand and replied, "I found a designated driver, you don't mind, do you?" Not only did the new dad not mind, he also chuckled. "You are in such a hurry to leave, did you see it just now? Are you jealous?" Mom hummed softly. The new dad's voice was inexplicably happy. "Don't worry, I will break up with her." It's so strange, I heard the new dad and his friends say before, the most annoying thing is that women are jealous. I asked my mother, "What is the new dad happy about?" Mom told me. "A little trouble is good for your new dad, so that your new dad will feel that Mom loves him? He will think that he is infinitely charming. Then Mom, do you love him? Baby, remember, Mom will only love herself and you forever." So, when that beautiful aunt appeared again, this time, Mom was angry because of me. 08 The beautiful aunt is called Carrie. After hearing that the new dad didn't answer her calls or see her, she was going crazy and stopped us on the road. "Jane, it must be you, a bitch, secondhand goods, who made Joe break up with me, right?" I was very angry and pushed her. "Don't scold my mother." Carrie pinched my fleshy face hard, and the pain made me burst into tears. "Little bastard, I haven't settled the score with you for the ice cream handprints on my skirt last time." When my mother saw the red marks on my face, her face suddenly sank. She walked over quickly and kicked Carrie away with a kick. She stared at Carrie with a cold face, without the usual gentleness. "Remember, you can scold me, but don't touch my baby." Perhaps she was frightened by the fierceness in her mother's eyes. Carrie glared at her mother and left angrily. My mother squatted down and touched my face gently. When she stood up, her face suddenly became strange. Against the light, a tall man was leaning against the car door with a cigarette between his fingertips. You are still so strong to kick someone in the late stage of terminal illness? No chemotherapy? Dad's half-smiley face gradually emerged from the light and shadow. Jane, you little liar. I don't know why, every time Mom sees Dad, she is a little afraid of him. Obviously, he looks better than a big star. Mom clenched her palms and said, "What do you want?" Dad moved the corners of his lips, "Break off the engagement and come back to the MO family with me." Dad was also strange. He was obviously not good to Mom, and even the servants at home bullied me and Mom. But now he insisted on Mom going back. Mom also asked, "Emotionlia, why do you insist on me going back to the MO family?" Dad did not answer Mom's words, as if immersed in his own story. When I was a child, I raised a little rabbit. I liked it very much, but it suddenly didn't like to eat the food I fed it, and would rather go to other people's homes to beg for food. Even if it starved to death, it can only die in my house, Jane, am I right? Dad stared at Mom deeply. Mom held my hand tightly and said calmly and restrainedly, "What if I insist on not going back to the MO family?" Dad said casually, "Oh, then I can only talk to Joe." Mom looked up at Dad, "What does it matter if Joe knows?" "Yes, what does it matter if I know?" Mom's body stiffened for a moment. It was the new dad. 09 The new dad appeared out of nowhere. He came over and put his arm around Mom's shoulders and held my hand. "Aren't you divorced? Which law stipulates that she can't remarry?" "Mr. Mo, you live by the sea? Why do you care so much?" Mom looked at the new dad in surprise. The new dad whispered, "Don't look at me, I know I'm handsome." Mom laughed. Dad's eyes fell on the hand of the new dad on Mom's shoulder and frowned slightly. Then, he slowly raised the corners of his lips. "I just bought a villa by the sea last week." "You know all this?" I asked, pulling the bunny doll's ears. "Do you really live by the sea?" Dad bent down and looked at me. "Baby, that's your home too." Mom pulled me and stopped me from talking. Dad slowly stood up, straightened his back, and looked at the new dad with disdain. "Do you know who she is? How dare you marry her?" The new dad said lightly, "A gentle and kind person." Dad smiled meaningfully. "Oh, it's a pity that you missed a good show of the little white rabbit performing taekwondo." The new dad didn't understand, but Mom's hand trembled. Maybe Mom thought that when she kicked someone just now, she wasn't so gentle. Dad glanced at Mom, bent down slightly, and got into the car. In the slowly half-lowered car window, he said calmly, "I wish you a happy wedding tomorrow." The black Maybach quickly disappeared into the traffic. Mom frowned slightly. "You know everything?" "Yes, I knew it since the day of the party." "I'm not that stupid." He shook Mom's hand. "Don't worry, it's nothing." Mom was stunned for a moment, nodded, and shook the new dad's hand back. 10 The next day was Mom's wedding. Mom told me to be careful and not to run around. She said that Dad was a lunatic and might do anything. Especially now that the money and power of the MO family are in his hands. He can be as crazy as he wants. Mom sighed, "If he ruins the wedding, then Mom's previous gentle output will be in vain." I was very obedient. I held the little white rabbit doll, ate the big white rabbit milk candy, and watched the ants put makeup on Mom. But my little belly was disobedient and wanted to pee. I pulled one of my new dad's female assistants to accompany me to the bathroom. "Auntie, you have to keep an eye on me. I'm prone to problems." Auntie said she would guarantee that I would be fine. No wonder Mom said that love-brained words can't be trusted. I just closed the door, and my aunt's boyfriend called. My aunt left me and went to the corner to chat with her phone. I sighed and could only take care of myself. After wiping my hands, I prepared to go to the dressing room to find my mother. Something bad happened. Suddenly someone covered my mouth with a cloth. My eyes went dark and I fell asleep. When I woke up in a daze, I found myself in a car. That Carrie sat next to me fiercely. I was very scared, but I held it in. "Where is my mother? My mother will be anxious and crazy if she can't see me." Carrie giggled. "I want her to be anxious and crazy, so that the wedding can't be held today, but my mother will be very scary when she goes crazy." Carrie pinched my arm. "Is it as scary as me?" She pinched it hard again. "Speak, little bastard, is it as scary as me? What's there to compare?" It hurt so much, but I held back my tears. If I cried, she would be happy. I don't want her to feel good. Because my mother said that we can't let ourselves cry and make others feel good. When she was about to pinch me, the other two kidnappers spoke. "Be careful, Master Sun warned not to hurt this little guy." Carrie took back her hand that was about to pinch me. She took a photo of me and sent it to my mother, and talked to her on the phone. "Yes, you come alone, don't tell anyone, and don't call the police." She smiled at me in a sinister way. "Joe is very ambitious, and he got married mostly to shape his image so that he can run for the president of the Chamber of Commerce. Your mother ran away from the marriage and embarrassed him. I wonder if he still wants you." Carrie threw me into the old and dilapidated factory like the one on TV. I sat quietly and counted. Val and Sue was chatting with the kidnappers. Carrie is a second-hand product. I'll make her kneel down and beg me later. See if she's still pretending to be noble. I want to see her crying and begging me. I couldn't count anymore. Let me go quickly, or my mother will really go crazy. They laughed. Joe is so busy today, busy cleaning up the mess, how can he care about you? Just Jane, it's a piece of cake to kill her. They don't understand. In fact, it's enough for my mother to come alone. Suddenly, there was a loud noise outside. The rolling door was hit with a hole and was about to fall. Oh, my mother is so handsome, she drove the Jeep directly into the factory. She braked suddenly and almost knocked Carrie and the others over. The two kidnappers snorted, and just as they picked up the iron rod, they were directly shocked by the electric baton that my mother brought from somewhere. Carrie swallowed her saliva and her legs began to shake. Don't come over. My mother was polite when she kicked Carrie last time. This time she kicked her to the ground. Yo-yo, did she hit you? I lifted my arm, revealing a blue mark. Mom's eyes turned red. She instantly broke Carrie's wrist, and the tip of her shoe crushed it twice. Did I tell you not to touch my baby, huh? Carrie screamed in pain, crying and begging her mother to let go. I suddenly remembered what my new father had said to his friends. Our Jane is timid and gentle. When she encounters something, she will only hide in my arms and cry. Just as I was thinking, several cars suddenly drove in, filling a factory building. The person who jumped out of the first car turned out to be the new father in a groom's suit. He stared at Mom in amazement. At this moment, the usually gentle mother looked quite unique. One hand holding an electric baton, the other hand on her waist, a veil on her head, jeans wrapped in leather boots, but the tip of her shoe stepped on Carrie. She was still shouting viciously, "If you do it again, I will kill you and throw you into the high seas." Mom, Uncle Joe is here. Jane, didn't you say you forgot to wear your wedding ring and went home to get it? Mom turned around and froze. Look at her, she doesn't want to take the wedding ring, she wants to kill someone. Dad laughed and stepped down from the second car. Dad's eyes suddenly became strange when he looked at Mom, which he had never seen before. It was like a deep cold pond with a slight ripple, just like when I saw delicious ice cream and stared at it fiercely. Dad smiled and said, I said, if Joe didn't come, it would be a pity for this good show. Fortunately, he listens to advice. I turned my head and glanced at the new dad. Hey, why is the way he looks at Mom now exactly the same as Dad's? Did Mom become their ice cream? Mom clenched her palms for a moment. Emotionally, you set up this? Dad lifted his coat and put his hands in his pockets. How can I have such a stupid idea? I usually just rob you openly, like putting you in my car. Mom stared at him, and he smiled. Okay, I just helped her, otherwise Carrie, a fool, couldn't even leave the hotel. Because the new father was afraid of trouble, 1,000 security guards were arranged at the wedding. Mom frowned. Emotionally, Yo-Yo is also your child. I didn't say it wasn't. Dad just said loudly, come in. 20 or so bodyguards who looked like iron towers quickly appeared outside the door, some of them holding binoculars and guns. I will keep her safe. Mom was speechless. Is it fun for you to do this? I really want to shock you to death with an electric baton. Dad pretended to be scared and took 2 steps back, but there was no fear in his eyes. He said to the new father, Joe, do you still want this woman who is as fierce as a demon? 14 The new father's Adam's apple rolled, and he looked at his mother with hesitation. Finally, he asked softly, Jane, is this the real you? Mom simply stopped pretending and talked to herself. Sorry, I didn't spend the money you gave me to dress myself up to please you, I just pleased myself. These years, Yo-Yo went to kindergarten and I went to school, and I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before. By the way, I got my pilot's license last week. Mom smiled, you gave me money, and I also provided emotional value. You like a gentle, sensible, cooking, and non-irrational girlfriend. I cooperated pretty well, and you didn't suffer any loss. I'm sorry for today. It's not my intention to run away from marriage. This marriage can't be concluded. You can take the house back, and we can move out tomorrow. Uncle Joe asked calmly, move away, where are you going to live? I majored in finance in college. I have made some money from financial management and investment in the past few years, which is enough for my mother and me to live. Of course, I have to thank you for the principle you provided. I probably understood it. New father, can't be a new father anymore, can only be Uncle Joe again. Joe glanced at the weed-covered wilderness outside the factory. When he turned back again, his eyes became hot. Jane, can we postpone the wedding to next month? I still want to marry you. Carrie fainted from the pain on the ground. Her work today was in vain. The father, who was watching the show with his arms folded, suddenly stopped smiling and felt cold all over. Why, I became a witness to your wedding, right? Jane, if you dare to agree, it's a bit too much. Mom took a deep breath, I can. Dad's eyes darkened instantly. Ever since returning home from the broken factory that day, Uncle Joe seemed to have changed. No ex-girlfriend would bother Mom anymore. He didn't go out for social events anymore. He would come to our house early after get off work every day. Watch movies with mom, talk about mom's work, play Lego with me, and watch cartoons. My mom and I both thought it was pretty good. However, on mom's birthday, Uncle Joe was late. When the cake he took out was almost melted, mom put it back in the refrigerator. The doorbell rang at last, and I happily went to open the door. Mom, what is this? There was a beautiful cake box on the ground outside the door. When I opened it, there was a strange-shaped bunny cake inside. Mom's face suddenly changed. Throw it away. Just then, mom's phone rang. It was Dad who sent a blessing voice. Little bunny, happy birthday, remember to go home. From that day on, Uncle Joe suddenly became busy. On Sunday, Uncle Joe was rarely busy and came to our house. I hadn't slept yet, and I saw through the crack of the door that he looked very tired. Mom asked him gently, what happened, can you tell me? Uncle Joe smiled reluctantly, nothing, just a little busy at work. Mom rarely held Uncle Joe's hand and asked, in the future, we will be husband and wife, and I hope we can trust each other. Uncle Joe just said, and said nothing more. But gradually, Uncle Joe was finally not so busy. Life returned to the way it was before. The difference is that Uncle Joe often stared at Mom's figure in a daze. Fortunately, happy things are coming soon. Mom is going to have another wedding. Mom wore a white wedding dress and put on makeup, looking as beautiful as a fairy. Uncle Joe was stunned. He lowered his eyes and thought for a moment, then said to Mom, it's still early for the wedding, Jane, let's go to a place first. He took Mom and left. I followed with my short legs. After getting in the car, Uncle Joe stood outside, lowered his head and told the driver something. Then he smiled at Mom, you go first, I'll be there in a while. Mom opened her mouth to say something, but Uncle Joe left in a hurry. The car drove all the way to the beach, and I smelled the sea breeze. Mom, look, what a beautiful house. The driver couldn't help but admire. To be able to buy a single-family villa in a place like Jingzhou Bay where every inch of land is worth a lot of money, you must be rich or noble. The driver handed a box to Mom. Inside was the key to the villa. Mom slightly loosened her clenched palms. Mom, is this the new home Uncle Joe bought for you? Oh, I see. It's called the wedding house, right? The villa is filled with beautiful roses inside and out, with dewdrops on them. The moment Mom pushed open the door, a pair of shiny leather shoes appeared on the spiral staircase in the house. Joe, how come you're faster than us? When the man's face appeared, it was not Uncle Joe. It was Dad. He put his hands in his pockets and spoke in his usual casual voice. Welcome home, little rabbit. Mom's face suddenly turned pale. Mom pulled me and turned to leave. It's not too late to leave after listening to the recording. Dad slowly opened his phone. The conversation between Uncle Joe and Dad came from inside. You can restore your supply chain. Let Jane come to accompany me for 3 days on the wedding day. It was Uncle Joe's voice. Impossible. Then you're just going to watch your career that you've worked hard for more than 10 years go down in an instant? Joe, I'll only give you 3 minutes to think about it. Dad cut off the recording. You don't need to hear the ending, because you are right here. Jane, this is Joe's choice, selling his wife for fame. Mom clenched her palms, you forced him. Dad sneered, he is not good enough, blame me? Mom looked back at Dad coldly. The Mo family has a century-old foundation, and Joe, who started from scratch, certainly can't beat you. Dad walked to the wine cabinet and picked up a glass of red wine. He gently shook the dark red liquid. Jane, have you ever thought that Joe can sell you out on the wedding day, which means that he values profit and his career always comes first? Who do you think you are? One day, if a local boss takes a fancy to you and wants to exchange profits with him, believe it or not, he will still sell you out a second time. The red liquid slid into Dad's throat. He doesn't care whether I will torture you in the next 3 days. He just sent you here regardless of your life or death. You still want to marry such a person? Mom's face turned pale. You are not much better, you are a scumbag. Dad smiled strongly. You can scold him, but you can't scold me. I am a scumbag. Mom wanted to take me away, but she couldn't. A few bodyguards who looked like iron towers appeared at the door and blocked the way. Carrie's mother, take the young lady to the 3rd floor to play with toys. Don't come out until dark. Mom comforted me with her eyes, go and play. When Carrie's mother took me upstairs, I saw Dad hugging Mom in his arms. Don't worry, I won't torture you. These 3 days, I will only love you. 18 When the sun, a salted egg yolk, fell on the other side of the mountain. Carrie's mother finally let me go to find her mother. Walking to the 2nd floor, I saw Dad enter the study refreshed. Mom lay quietly on the pure black bed, with tears in the corners of her eyes. It was the first time I saw my mother's eyes like this, like a pitiful little deer, with a hint of unwillingness. Seeing me coming, my mother sat up, the quilt slipped down, revealing many red marks on her body. Mom, were you bitten by a mosquito? No, I was bitten by a dog. Mom, do you want to get a rabies vaccine? Mom didn't say anything. I think my mother is so smart that she will definitely handle it herself. But this dog is too annoying. It bit my mother for 3 consecutive days. On the 4th day, my father finally allowed me and my mother to go out. I only give you 1 day to cut off your relationship and move back. Jane, remember, I don't have that much patience. Mom didn't say anything, just pulled me away. We went back to our original home to pack up. Unexpectedly, when the door opened, I saw Joe sitting on the sofa. There was a circle of empty wine bottles at his feet. Mom looked at him coldly. What are you doing? Joe was full of alcohol, his shirt was wrinkled, and he didn't look handsome at all. When he saw us, his eyes lit up for a while, but soon went out. He stood up uncomfortably. Jane, I'm sorry, can you forgive me? Can we start over? I can sell the company, and we can live abroad as a family of 3. Mom just looked at Joe quietly. Joe sat back on the sofa again, buried his head in his hands, and his voice came out muffled. Jane, you may not believe it, but during the 3 days you were away, I suddenly realized that I really fell in love with you. Mom laughed. So much? You gave me away on the wedding day. We were not innocent people in the first place. Didn't you fall in love with me because I look like the photo in your wallet? Joe looked up and looked at his mother in shock. You know? Yes, I look like your white moonlight, otherwise why would an orphan and a widow catch your eye? You enjoy the emotional value I provide, and I enjoy the money you pay. This is a matter of money and goods, not love. Joe defended himself, probably from the abandoned factory. When I saw you alive, I found that my long silent heart began to beat, and I really wanted to marry you. You really want to marry me, and you really want to sell me. Joe, we can't be together. Because although I love money, I cherish my life and advocate freedom, and you violated my taboo. Joe stood up dejectedly. Mom said softly again, oh, by the way, that day in the abandoned factory, at a certain moment I thought about marrying you and living a good life. Joe's eyes instantly ignited hope. Mom chuckled, but now it's gone. I don't want to be sold a second time. You betrayed my trust. Joe looked ashen and staggered away. That night, we moved back to the MO family. As soon as my mother returned to the MO family, she started crying as if someone had died in the family. My father put down his knife and fork and was in no mood to eat. Are you so sad to leave him? My mother suddenly threw herself on my father's knees. Mo Shuanlia, I beg you, please let me go. Joe is very good to me. Can you help us? I was stunned. When did my mother love Joe so much? My father's face was terribly dark, but a smile slowly rose at the corner of his mouth. His knuckles knocked on the table again and again. His tone was very light. Do you love him so much? My mother nodded while crying. My father suddenly got angry and swept the high-end dinner plate in front of him to the ground, breaking it into pieces. He broke his fingers and blood flowed all over his palms. But he didn't seem to feel any pain at all and started to make a phone call. It doesn't matter if I hurt the enemy by 1,000 and lose 800. Yes, there is only one goal, to make Joe's company bankrupt. My mother just stood by and listened quietly, and began to drink the soup slowly. She also stuffed a mouthful of delicious meat into my mouth. When Dad couldn't see, Mom's lips slightly raised. 18 night, I asked Mom why she was crying. She just smiled and said, nothing, just want to see dogs bite dogs. Later, I heard that Uncle Joe was really bankrupt and broke. He also owed a lot of money. Dad, he is really cruel. 19 Since moving back to the MO family, Dad didn't allow Mom to go out casually. He also didn't let Carrie's mom go to work. He raised Mom like a pot of daughter. He almost locked Mom in the room in the corner of the 2nd floor. Mom became very unhappy, couldn't eat, and lost weight. And she had those strange red marks on her body every day. One day, I heard Mom ask Dad, is it fun to lock me up like this? Dad replied lazily, yes. Jane, I don't know since when, you have become more and more interesting. Have you changed your mind? I suddenly remembered that Mom once said, the world we live in is an NPC world. Before, I was a gentle and timid female supporting role who only depended on men, but I suddenly woke up and became the protagonist of my own world. So, Mom doesn't want to be the female supporting role that was bullied at will. But why has Mom changed again now? That day, Dad pinched Mom's chin and spoke. If it weren't for your stupid mother who stuffed you into our family, I would have married Faye. Faye was the girl who lived with Dad in the shantytown when he was still the illegitimate son of the MO family. Mom said she was the white moonlight in the book. She died unexpectedly on the day of my parents' wedding. I once asked my mother, what kind of person is Faye? Mom pouted, just like Mo Shuanlia, she is a lunatic. I heard from my mother that Faye was dying of a terminal illness, but she deliberately called my mother on the wedding day. She told my mother, you can never beat me. Then she jumped from the top floor of the hotel where my parents got married like a bird spreading its wings. Dad has needed drugs to help him sleep since then. Later, Dad saw the call records on Mom's mobile phone and determined that it was Mom who stimulated Faye and killed Faye. After marriage, he locked Mom in a small dark room every day and let the servants at home bully her, Before mom gave birth, when she was in excruciating pain, he pulled out mom's pain relief stick. Now, dad is looking at mom and smiling again. Since Faye is gone, you should compensate me. Jane, be obedient, okay? Mom buried her head in dad's knees. Like completing a ritual, she answered softly, okay. Mom has changed. She has slowly begun to like dad and rely on him. She is as weak and incompetent as the daughter she once hated. When dad got off work, she threw herself into his arms like a young swallow. Dad said, Carrie's mom is my mom's old friend. You have to respect her a little. Mom nodded obediently. But dad smiled. Jane, you are not pretending, are you? His fingertips stroked mom's face. Then I'll see how long you can pretend, huh? Mom said softly, I'm not. There were tears in her eyes. Carrie's mom at home saw that mom was so obedient, and she began to add coriander to the dishes she cooked for mom. She even put coriander in the fruit and vegetable juice. Mom doesn't like it. Carrie's mother said sarcastically, Mr. M.O. likes to eat it, ma'am, don't be so pretentious. Listen to my old woman's advice, it's good for your health and you'll have a boy. Strange, I've never heard that eating coriander can give birth to a boy. Mom didn't say anything, frowned and swallowed it. Then she vomited while holding the toilet. Dad saw it, his eyes were slightly surprised. Are you pregnant? Mom said lightly, go check it out. Mom checked it out and was not pregnant. But from that day on, Dad began to trust Mom very much. 20 because it was in the hospital parking garage. It seemed that someone mistook Dad in a white shirt for a doctor off work. A medical dispute broke out. Mom blocked a knife for Dad. The murderer in a sweatshirt took the opportunity to escape. Dad was about to catch him. Mom screamed in pain. Dad's eyes were bloodshot, and he saw a fruit knife inserted into Mom's heart. Seeing Mom's pale face and a lot of blood pouring out of her body, I was so scared that I couldn't stop crying. Dad picked up Mom at a loss, his fingers trembling. As he ran, he told Mom, Jane, you'll be fine. Dad, who has always been high and mighty, fearless. He didn't cry when Faye died, only resentment. Now seeing Mom injured, tears fell with red eyes. Tears fell into Mom's neck one by one. Mom raised her bloody hand and touched Dad's handsome face. Don't worry, I won't die. God has eyes. Mom really can't die. Because Mom has dextrocardia. Mom's heart is different from that of ordinary people, growing on the right side, and the knife is inserted on the left side. Mom was lucky to save her life. But Dad changed. He began to stop imprisoning Mom. He began to trust Mom very much. Because Mom is a woman who is willing to risk her life for him. Jane, I now believe that you love me. Mom nodded, tiptoed, and kissed Dad's beautiful lips. From then on, Mom went wherever she wanted and did whatever she wanted. She didn't even take Carrie's mom seriously. That day, after Dad went to work, Mom asked Carrie's mom to eat durian. Carrie's mom, you often say that you are my mother-in-law's friend, and you are also my mother-in-law. Then I should also respect you well. Musang King durian, eat it, it's big and plentiful. Carrie's mom waved her hand, Madam, are you kidding? I never eat this stuff. I feel upset after eating a bite. Mom laughed, it's the same as coriander. It's nutritious. It's good for your health if you eat more. Carrie's mom didn't eat it. Mom asked someone to force her to eat. If you can't finish it, it means that Carrie's mom has a poor appetite and is not in good health. Leave the MO family as soon as possible and go home to recuperate. Carrie's mom was of course reluctant to give up such a high salary. She also couldn't let go of her power to bully others in the MO family. She ate it with gritted teeth, vomited a mouthful, and ate a mouthful. She stared at her mother fiercely. Mom took a sip of coffee and said, Carrie mom, you should retire. You are not in good health. Carrie mom was so angry that her eyes popped out. Don't go too far. I have eaten it all. I didn't finish the durian shell. Mom smiled and said, Carrie mom, don't waste it. Carrie mom of course didn't finish the durian shell in the end, she was kicked out, including her bag. When Dad got off work and found out, he didn't say anything. From then on, Mom's status in the MO family rose. Mom replaced a group of new servants. They were all gentle, kind, and honest people. Mom was very satisfied. She became more gentle to Dad. She took care of Dad like a baby. Cooked delicious food for Dad, served tea and water to Dad, and never went out casually. When Dad couldn't sleep in the middle of the night, Mom could wake up at any time and get medicine for Dad. However, Dad's symptoms became more and more serious. He often suffered from insomnia and was in a bad mood. 21 half a year later, Dad rarely went to work. It was Mom who helped him with his work. Mom is very smart. She can do it as soon as Dad teaches her. Dad also arranged for Mom to work in the company. Dad was resting at home. One early autumn afternoon, Dad suddenly called me back from playing outside. Yo-yo, you tell me, aren't the curtains green? The servants in the room all lowered their heads. Sir, it's red, you're mistaken. Dad's eyes were a little confused, and occasionally he looked at me sharply. Yo-yo, you tell me. Mom looked at me, her eyelashes trembling twice. The curtains fluttering in the wind are of course fruit green, and my mother and I chose them together. How could they be red? I told him calmly, Dad, the curtains are red, can't you see? Mom was stunned for a moment, and a trace of relief flashed in her eyes. Mom pouted, children don't lie, now you believe it, right? Dad was stunned for a moment, then held his forehead, Jane, my head seems to hurt a little. Mom helped Dad into the dark room with thick curtains drawn. Mom said that Dad was afraid of light and liked quiet. Dad would be locked up for the whole day. Later, Dad went out less often. He had to take many kinds of medicine every day. Mom patiently took care of what doctor to see, what medicine to take, and when to take it. In addition, the company's affairs could only fall on Mom's shoulders. Mom often signed some agreements for Dad, and Dad signed without even looking at them. I know that Dad was very sleepy at that time. Mom is very smart and learns things quickly. Respect old employees and be friendly to new employees. Be gentle when you should be gentle, and be ruthless when you should be cruel. They respect and fear Mom. During the summer vacation of the first grade, I watched Mom go on stage to cut the ribbon and be interviewed by reporters. Mom's current title is Jane, Vice President of Kaifeng Group. Mom wore a well-cut Chanel latest suit and stood in front of the reporter, elegant and generous. She is not someone's wife, she represents herself. A reporter asked about Dad's condition at an inappropriate time. Mom was stunned for a moment, and then tears suddenly appeared in her eyes. I hope he gets better soon. My children and I are waiting for him to recover. Everyone expressed sympathy for my mother and said that she was a brave woman and a strong rose. But when she walked off the stage, she didn't shed a single tear. After returning home, I went to see my father. He didn't seem to have any signs of recovery. I kindly showed my father the video of my mother's interview. My father looked at the screen with a dull look in his eyes and just muttered to himself. She loves me. He may just live in his own world. This room was once prepared by my father for my mother. But now, he can only enjoy it himself. I closed the door silently, isolating the two worlds. I went downstairs and found my mother by the swimming pool. She was reading a book comfortably and tasting the fine red wine. I know that there is a crazy saying written by the author on the title page of this book. Before others drive you crazy, drive him crazy first. My mother's warm and clear voice passed by my ears with the wind. Yo-Yo is here. She picked up the delicate fork and fed me a bite of cake. Is it sweet? Sweet. Mom looked at me with a smile. Every day from now on will be sweet. I smiled and nodded. Mom is now rich and free. Life is so sweet that it's bubbling.